Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into this really unique story. It's about an ancient exodus, a group of people leaving the Tower of Babel. And this whole account comes from a text called the Book of Ether. So here's what we're going to do. We'll start by following this group on what sounds like a pretty impossible journey to a whole new world, and then we'll circle back to see what happened to everyone they left behind at the tower.
All right, let's jump right in. So our story kicks off at the foot of the infamous Tower of Babel. You've got all this chaos, a city basically defying a divine command, but right in the middle of it all, there's this one small group, just them and their families, holding on.
So they had this feeling, right? They knew something big was about to happen, that their language was going to get all mixed up. And in this super critical moment, a man named Jared goes to his brother, who the text says was, get this, large, mighty, and highly favored. And he basically begs him to pray for their group.
And guess what? The prayer worked. It was answered. While everything just falls apart around them, this one small group's language is totally preserved. But, solving one problem created a whole new one. Suddenly, they're like strangers in their own home.
And that right there sets the stage for what this text calls one of the great migrations in history. I mean, think about it. They couldn't stay in Bible anymore, so the big question was, where on earth were they supposed to go?
So with everything up in the air, Jared goes back to his brother and asks him to, inquire of the Lord again. What they were really hoping for was to be led to a place they called a land which is choice above all the earth. Talk about high hopes. And the response they got back? It was this really specific four-step command. It was basically a blueprint for their whole exodus. They were told, gather everything, your flocks, seeds, your families, and head north to a valley called Nimrod. And once you're there, you'll get the next steps.
Now this part is so important, you gotta get this. This wasn't just them running away. No, it was a full-on divine mission, and it came with this absolutely massive promise. They were told they'd be led to this choice land and that they would become a nation greater than any other on the face of the earth. That's a huge deal.
Okay, so after this long trek through the wilderness, and I mean, they're crossing tons of rivers and these simple little barges, they finally make it. They're standing at the edge of the Great Sea. They'd come so far, but honestly, the most dangerous part of their journey was just about to begin.
But then, things just stopped. Their progress completely stalled. For 4 whole years, they just camped there by the sea. And it got so bad that the brother of Jared, the text says, was chastened by the Lord for 3 hours straight, all because he'd stopped praying. Wow. That incredibly intense moment led to some deep repentance, and it got them focused back on their mission, for sure. So then, they were commanded to build these 8 incredible vessels. And these were nothing like their old, simple barges. No, these had to be built tight, like unto the Ark of Noah. Think about that. They were basically submarines, built to be totally swallowed by the waves and somehow survive the insane pressure of the deep ocean.
So how long did this voyage take? Get ready for this. An astonishing 344 days. That's nearly a full year they were out on the ocean.
And believe me, it was an absolutely brutal journey. The text talks about this furious, divine wind that was just constantly pushing them toward the promised land. But at the same time, you've got these mountain-sized waves and horrible storms just crashing over their boats, literally burying them in the sea over and over again.
Finally, after all that, their epic voyage came to an end on the shores of the Promised Land. The text says they just bowed down and did shed tears of joy, just so grateful to be alive. And according to this record, their arrival was a huge deal. It marked the repopulation of the ancient American continent.
Okay, so now that they've landed safely, let's hit pause on their story for a second and rewind. Let's go back to Babel and see what kind of disaster unfolded for the civilization that the Jaredites left behind.
So the source describes this confusion of tongues in a really interesting way. It wasn't just that people stopped understanding each other. It was more like this complex psychological event, where all of a sudden people started speaking in completely different linguistic sounds. It's like they all received brand new languages at the exact same time. And you can imagine what that did. This language barrier just instantly fractured their entire society. That unity they were trying so hard to preserve with the tower, it was just gone. People naturally started grouping up with others who spoke their new language, and from there, they finally did what they were supposed to do in the first place. They scattered all across the earth. And the record actually maps out this whole great dispersion. It's really fascinating. You can see how the 3 main tribal groups, the descendants of Ham, Japheth,
and Shem just spread out and settled the whole known world. We're talking Africa, Europe, the Middle East, Asia, everywhere.
All right, so let's bring it all together. What were the long-term consequences of these two totally different paths? You have the Jaredites on one side and everyone who was scattered from Babel on the other.
And this is really the core of the whole story, these two completely different legacies. On one hand, you have the Jaredites. Because they carried written records with them, they were able to hold on to their history and build this great civilization. But on the other hand, the nations that scattered, well, they lost track of where they came from. And over time, their real history just kind of faded away into myths and legends. So what this story really leaves us with is a pretty powerful question, isn't it? It suggests that just one single event, this one moment of confusion, can literally echo down through thousands of years. It can set the entire course for whole civilizations and completely shape how they remember, or how they forget, their own past.